Okay, so we're going to be discussing evolution and creationism. Of course, creationism is what I believe in, and evolution is something that I do not believe in, at least in terms of microevolution. I do believe in that, which is something that natural selection, variations within the species. I do agree with that. However, I don't agree with cosmic evolution. I do not agree with stellar evolution. I do not agree with chemical evolution. And I do not agree with evolution of life in terms of life developing from non-living materials. That being said, let's get into this. So, the geologic layer is the first avenue I'm going to go at. So the geologic layer says that each layer of strata is an era in history. Okay. I understand that the layers on top go after the layers below them. That's logical. However, how come you find, well, let's say, well, you get certain types of fossils that fall in certain types of layers. So how do you date the layers? Well, but based on the types of fossils that are in those layers. Okay, that's fine. How do we know how old the fossils are? Well, based on what geologic layer they're in. Now we have a problem. Do you guys see that? Okay. So the next thing that we'll see is like, well, how do we accurately date these? Well, you can date, there's several dating techniques. Of course, the most famous is carbon-14, but carbon-14 only has a half-life of around 5,600 or so years. So obviously that can't date long term, like for millions of years. It doesn't work. You can use potassium argon dating or rubidium strontium dating, or there's several other dating techniques. There's uranium and 235, 238, but in each of those equations, on every single one of them, you have to know the initial amount before you can calculate the final amount. Now, how do you know the initial amount? Well, we assume that it was the same in the atmosphere, uniformitarianism, as Charles Lyell said it. So we have to assume it was the same in the atmosphere or in the rocks or in the strata before. How do we know that? We don't. It's an assumption. Okay, so therein lies our first problem with the dating techniques. It's the very first problem. What's our next problem with that? Well, we assume that the radioactive decay is constant. No, I have no reason to dispute that. Coming from a physics background, I have no reason to dispute that. However, there's been some conjecture about the speed of light. See, I have no reason. I've always been taught that the speed of light is constant. Okay. Now, if the speed of light has changed over time based on the expansion of the universe and the space-time continuum, then that might change. If that changes, everything else changes. Planck's constant changes. Rate of decays changes. Everything changes. Now, I can't confirm or deny that, but there is evidence to support both sides. Okay, so we can't discount it either. So I'm saying there's another question mark on the radio dating. Okay, so here we go again. Now, how do we know the age of the universe? Well, there are several methods. We can use it. The cosmic microwave background radiation is one method that we can use. Now that's basically the only evidence that we have for the Big Bang, if you want to call it evidence, because it's really not evidence, it's certain type of evidence that can be construed to fit this certain theory. But there's many other theories that this evidence can support as well. It can also support creationism. In the beginning, it can support that. So the cosmic microwave background radiation is one key. Now, how do we know the age of the universe? We can use the redshift, the Hubble constant, and the expansion rate of the universe. Well, the redshift just tells us the certain stars that we're looking at, how fast they seem to be moving away from us, and at an accelerated rate. But there's a few problems with that. We have looked at certain clusters, and some stars seem to be moving closer to us. Of course, that's also explainable about the rotation of certain galaxies and certain globular clusters, as well as just sporadic stars. And we're not going to even get into gamma ray bursts or pulsars at the moment, although we do need to discuss that. Type 1a supernovas as standard candles for measuring the distances. Now, because we know based on the mass of a star that its mass will produce a certain luminosity, and we know its luminosity, we use that to calculate the distance. Again, therein lies the problem with the speed of light. If the speed of light has changed over the past, but there is some conjecture, you won't see this in mainstream physics, but if there is some conjecture, then that changes those numbers as well. But let's go back again to the geology. So all these strata have been laying on the Earth. Uniformitarianism, as Charles Lyell put it, says that this is just building up over time, like a space dust just collecting with gravity, I suppose. Which is why we thought that the space dust on the moon would have been many, many, many meters deep. But when the Eagle landed on July 1969, the layer of dust was that thick. That's about 4,000 years layers of dust based on their own models. Interesting. Okay. Also, so let's go. I'm trying to stick to geology, but my mind wanders. So, how do some of these geological things form? Why do we... The Pangea theory does not pan out, by the way. South America does not fit against Africa. If you look at the size and measure the size based on just basic charts, they do not fit. Not even close. And when they try to do the Pangea theory, they completely ignore Mexico and Central America. It's like they don't exist. Oh, well, they don't fit into our puzzle piece, so let's just ignore them for now. Okay? Now, I do agree that the Earth has gone through some catastrophic changes. Tectonic changes, geological changes, changes in the Earth's magnetic field, and also the Earth's air pressure and oxygen content. I think all these have changed over however much amount of time you want to believe in. I believe it's shorter than latter. I don't believe that these things occurred over long periods of time, because things happen so quickly, so vastly. Look at every ancient legend and every culture on planet Earth. Look at the Hopis. They knew that the Earth had faced many catastrophes. Look at the Hebrew. Many catastrophes have occurred there. Look at the Chinese history. Many, many things have occurred. And I can go on and on about that, but I'm not a historian, so we'll try to stick to, again, the geology. So on the Mesozoic layer, which is most commonly encompasses the Triassic and the Jurassic, where we have certain species of animals that supposedly existed at that time. Now, it's possible that these animals evolved to a certain extent. And when I say the word evolved, I mean that these animals evolved into other forms of themselves. Like this one right here might have been a large predatory cat, but it's still a cat. Okay? She's still predatory, by the way. Now, these other levels, like, it's by the way, it's interesting the Jurassic Park, that half the animals on the movie Jurassic Park actually existed in the Cretaceous period, according to paleontologists, but that's just another funny little thing. But their timeline's way off. Why did Sir George claim that he fought a dragon? Why did Lord Yu in China say that they were raising dragons, and then they had a whole job for dragon feeders? Why did speaking of China, well, going to China, I mean, why does the Chinese zodiac have 11 animals that exist today in real life, and the other one's a dragon? What is that, just an imaginary thing, or is it something that these people actually think? So dragons, dinosaurs, same thing in my opinion. Job, Book of Job 40, talks about these things. Behemoth is something that he says that one of the most mightiest creations. Let me make sure I get the quote accurate. Says his tail is like a cedar. And some of these, like the Revised Standard Version and the NIV, and some of these will talk about, well, this is referring to an elephant or a hippopotamus. Nope. Because neither of them have a tail that's like a tree, like a cedar. The only thing that fits the description talking about the behemoth in the Book of Job is, well, it's going to be a patasaur or a brachiosaurus or something along those lines, you know, four-legged, long-necked, long-tailed dinosaur. That's the only thing that fits. And let's not even mention Mokele Mapembe in the Congo in Africa. What these locals keep claiming they see something like this. Obviously not as big as the ones that we see in fossil records, which makes sense. But they claim they see a creature like this that still exists today. Can't dispute that. You can dispute it, but there's many cases. I mean, we can talk about the plesiosaur, right? Now, if the story of the flood is true, Noah's flood, then they didn't have to take any sea creatures on the ark, obviously. There's plenty of water out there. So all the sea creatures evolved, and when I say evolved, I'm talking about microevolution, variations in the species, natural selection. I'm not talking about macroevolution. I'm not talking about species turning into different species, just to clarify. But if the flood occurred, then the life in the sea could have varied into a multitude of different type of creatures, but still based on the same kind as written in the book of Genesis. So these plesiosaurs could have found their ways into lakes and all over the world, like Loch Ness, perhaps. There's some conjecture about that. Lake Champlain, Champ, and it goes on and on and on. I can name many, many more. We can also talk about how these other things occurred. There was a case in Arizona, I believe it was, where these cowboys in the cowboy time in the 1800s, they killed this large bird. And of course we know the stories about the thunderbird from the Native Americans, again probably through the Navajos and the Hopis mostly. Not that I would know anything about that. But there was a story about these cowboys that shot this bird down. They said it was like a bat, but it was bigger than an eagle. And it had wings like a bat, and it had a protrusion on its head. I don't know. Could be a fake story, could not be. I don't know. I'm not the one to judge it. I'm just relaying this information. Disinformation or disinformation? Think about that. It's not disinformation. I hope not. There's also this same thing with those same type of creatures. And I'm not saying any names yet. There was a local tribe also in Africa, and I cannot recall the city, where they showed them pictures of all these flying things, and they pointed out, the first thing they pointed out was pterosaur, the pterodactylus, the pterodactyl, the pterodon, all those pictures of those same different similar types of creatures. They said, oh, those things fly through our area all the time. They like to go pick up I won't elaborate on the rest. But they like to do. That's what they like to feed on. So our history, as we know it, is not the way we believe it. It's not the way we've been taught. And even for me, I believe in creationism. I believe in that very much. But I cannot even be so bold to understand it. It's not for us to understand just yet. But we can study the evidence, the carbon dating, potassium, strontium dating. All of our dating techniques are invalid. They give us an idea, but sometimes they give us it completely wrong. So we can't rely on that. We can't completely rely on anything. We have to rely on faith. And that's why I think these things are here. Because that's the whole point. We've been given minds so we can question everything. And that's what we should do. We should question everything, study everything, do as much as we possibly can to figure out the best we can. We're never going to be 100%, but at least we can get closer to it. And as Jesus said, be mindful that you not be deceived. He said that several times, over and over again. So it's important that we do our best to try not to, because it's easy to. So thank you for listening to me. I will put this online and hopefully someone benefits from this. And I welcome all questions, comments, criticism, constructive and destructive. It's okay, I'm not afraid. Thank you for listening to me. Appreciate it.